Let me ask you this. Do you want to support your local communities, or do you want to keep buying products from power-hungry corporations that are based in Brazil and China? Our local communities are slowly dying, while at the same time, people like Jeff Bezos has become the richest man in the world. Companies like JBS, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, have siphoned off billions of dollars in profit per year, and they're based in Brazil. And then companies like Walmart post $500 billion profits in 2023 alone. We don't have to go any further to see the problem. All the money that we used to bring in to our local communities from locally and regionally created products and companies is now being siphoned off directly to one or two people or companies, and most of those aren't even based in the United States. Meanwhile, we praise these individuals and companies for the efficiencies they create in our climate and the jobs they create in our communities. So we can see the problem, but to change it, we're going to have to actually use something which we're all lacking, and that is a true understanding of what helps and hurts rural America. I'm Trinity Vandenaker, born and raised right here in the unpopulated state of Montana. I am standing up for the people and values of rural America. This is Life in the West. First, we really need to understand the problem, and then all the usual suspects on how people think we should fix it. And at the very end, I will tell you my opinion on what I think should happen to save rural America. Before the 1970s, people living around a local community could come into the town that they lived near and either purchase or order almost anything they needed. They'd bring in their milk from their 10 milk cows. They'd bring in cows to sell to the butcher shop, and the butcher would then cut up the meat and sell it to customers. Local grocery stores would purchase eggs and milk from the local community and sell it directly to the customers in town. Other stores would actually ship in things that they couldn't get locally and make them available to people, and people would be able to purchase them right there. But those dollars stopped in the community. Some of the people who own the businesses, who distribute and things like that, end up semi-wealthy or wealthy in those areas. Now, some people might think this is a bad thing, but those wealthy people, what did they do with that money? Some of it they put in a local bank where it created interest, made money for the bankers, who then spent it back in the community. Those wealthy individuals or business owners on their own would come to town. They would spend their money at the restaurants, spend their money at in construction, and then they would donate to like the high school sports teams, local community outreach things, events, things like that. That money that came into those local communities because of the way the system worked, they say that that money is turned over 7 times in that community. Now contrast that to what we do today. We have very large corporations, businesses, huge chains that are then in the towns or near small towns, if you live in a much smaller town like I do, where you have to drive to these bigger chains, where you get the same things but for less money. The thing is that money does not stay in that area. It is immediately siphoned off to a very large corporation. And that's why you see these individuals in these companies like Jeff Bezos and Walmart and JBS becoming massive conglomerates, because the money that would stay local, split up into all these different communities, is now being siphoned off to one location, making a very, very few individuals extremely wealthy, but depleting the finances and the economies of these smaller communities. And in many cases, this money isn't just going out of the communities to somewhere in our country. It's actually going overseas to companies that are based in Brazil and China, which, as you can tell, isn't helping us at all. The butcher shop is no longer in existence hardly anywhere in the United States because all the beef comes from 4 companies. Places like Walmart are shipping in everything from other areas to even sell to their customers. Almost nothing comes from local, and nothing stays local. This is a totally broken system. Now, I don't have anything against foreign countries. I think a lot of what they do in Brazil, and especially like my heart really is connected to the agriculture community in Canada. I feel their pain because they're really dealing with a lot of the same issues that we are. But I also believe the way to bring back local is to think and spend your money locally first. The things that you need on top of that, that you can't get from that local community, then should be brought in from wherever they are created and needed. That is really backwards of what we're doing right now, but I think that's the answer to a lot of our problems. So what really changed? Well, in the name of bringing consumers convenience and lower prices, and also trying to comply with climate change demands, we have put this thought process in people's mind, and government has incentivized companies to become larger. There's this view that they are more efficient that way, and they're actually now under these demands of trying to get a good ESG rating instead of helping out the communities that are below them. So for the very low price of global efficiency, lower prices, and convenience, we have sold out our local communities to corporations that are now the giants of the world. So now the goals of these huge companies are actually driven by the demand for more profits by their shareholders, board of directors and shareholders, and the new ESG demands by climate extremists. This has allowed the environment of large companies buying up all of their competition to become giant companies with no competition. For example, you can see all of these companies right here that are owned by Pepsi. So if you purchase from any one of these brands, many of which are not a drink of any kind, they're all kinds of companies. And you may think you're buying Cheetos from the Cheetos company, but actually it's all owned by Pepsi. The same with JBS. These are the brands that JBS owns. Now you may have never heard of JBS, even though it is the largest meat packer in the world, and it's based in Brazil. But if you take a look at some of these brands, and then you go to the meat section of a local grocery store or any grocery store, and you'll see some of these brands. And now you know that when you think you're making a choice between buying from Swift or the label that says Certified Angus Beef, established in 1978, you understand now that you're really not making a choice at all. You're buying from the same company. So you might ask, well, isn't this monopolies? Isn't this against the law? And you'll be right. Monopolies are against the law because they create an environment where there is no competition. And in that, they can control an industry and dictate its prices. And dictate its prices, meaning that anybody smaller than them, they can run out of business by undercutting them with prices. And they can also tell the people that they're buying from what they will pay, because there is no competition in the marketplace then to buy this person's products from a small manufacturer, rancher, or farmer. And in the name of efficiency, we have allowed these companies to stay in business through government regulations, or not really government regulations, actually just the fact that we have laws on the books to stop monopolies. We just aren't enforcing them because the broader goals of globalization actually believe that we need these massive companies to be competitive. The problem is by doing that, we are hurting the very people that the government is supposed to protect. Now, we've discussed that money, instead of going into local communities and being turned over 7 times, is now going out, is being siphoned off immediately to corporations that are massive, now global giants, who then take their profits and make a few people extremely wealthy without that money coming back to the communities. But in the name of efficiency, are we actually having an effect on health? That's one of the reasons I always hear in the comments of my videos is like, oh, well, yeah, but it's much better to have these large companies in control of your food because they have to comply with such and such rules, and that makes it more healthy. First, I need to discuss the efficiency problem. People use this all the time, as an excuse to allow these massive corporations to continue. It's more efficient, therefore it's better for the planet. Let me set the record straight. Efficiency in a company means that you waste less money downstream from the top. So the more efficient a company is, it's not that they're being more efficient with their pollution or their emissions. It's how well they're putting the money in at the bottom and how much of that goes to the top. So in an inefficient business, lots of people actually make more money down below them. The more efficient the business is, the more of the money is siphoned off to the very few elite at the top. That's what we're talking about when we say efficiency. But people kind of associate it with the more efficient the system, the better it is for the economy and the people and the globe. But actually, it's not. When I got to thinking about this, I thought, no, that's not actually right. The inefficient portion is where you don't have control of everything downstream of you. So there's a lot of people that are making more money than maybe you want them to, and not all of it is going to the top. The most efficient system is actually the worst for rural America. As far as health goes, the U.S. has the highest rate of people with multiple chronic illnesses and twice the average obesity of the OECD, whatever that is. And that's according to the Commonwealth Fund. Well, what about safety in production of the items, let's say our food? Well, right now there's 4 companies that can pretty much control 85% of all the meat that flows through the United States. A couple weeks ago, they had an E. coli problem in their hamburger. But by the time somebody found it, this company had already shipped out. The owner said, well, it's already shipped out nationwide. We don't even know where it goes. It just goes everywhere. So when you have only a few companies, when you have a very narrow bottleneck in your distribution channel, one of the problems with that is by the time you catch something, it is everywhere throughout the entire country. Whereas if you had these distribution points and manufacturing points distributed out all over the place in smaller regional areas, if you have a problem here, you only have to deal with it in this region, not immediately the whole country has E. coli in their hamburger. The thought process that is so much safer or healthier kind of doesn't bear out there. So health-wise, because of the fact that we can see we're not becoming healthier as a nation, and we've been operating like this for quite some time, I think we're actually getting sicker and sicker because of all the processing we're putting in our foods from these companies to make them cheaper and easier for us to eat, more tasty, things like that. I would say that that's actually making us sicker, not more healthy. And the fact that our distribution lines are so narrow that now when anything is contaminated, it goes out nationwide before anybody can even catch it. And you have a problem nationwide instead of a local or regional problem. I don't think that that's a very good argument for what we're doing in our country by consolidating these companies. But what about the planet? Are we actually helping the planet by having these large corporations control so much of the market? Well, that's what we're going to talk about now. In the name of climate change, and I really struggle with that because climate change is a trash term now. It can be used for any weather event, whether it's local or regional or global. It doesn't really matter. It's climate change, right? In the name of climate change and the climate change goals that are set forth by the WEF, which is a group, it's actually a self-declared governmental group of billionaires. They're not actually government of anything. They're just multi-billionaires, so far removed from actual reality of what we deal with as humans down here in our lowly little lives. They have set forth all of these targets like Agenda 2030 and net zero and things like that. So groups like the WEF and government like to have massive global corporations. They'd like to see it all down to one corporation because then they can dictate to that corporation that they need to lower or raise some standard that they set in place. Then after that happens, the corporations, the massive corporations, which are easier to control, which is why the government and WEF wants those in power. It's easy to control this one entity. And they rely then on these massive corporations to put pressure on their suppliers, which in this case would be small manufacturers or farmers and ranchers that live locally and raise your food out here on the plains or in Kansas or anywhere. Those people, they put pressure on those to cut emissions and do whatever it is that they want them to do so that the company itself can claim they can get a better ESG rating, which comes from the WEF organized standards, right? So it's kind of a chain reaction. But the company's not actually changing what they do. Typically, they're just putting more and more pressure on rural America to meet the standards that they dictate. On top of this, now we have what's called carbon credits. And I almost smile when I say this because this is a mythical thing. Now, because they understand that farmers and ranchers and landowners actually benefit the environment, they have put what's called carbon credits on ranch land and farmland that can be sold to these massive corporations to get a better ESG rating or hit whatever target they're trying to hit by 2030. Now, notice they didn't actually do anything. They changed nothing about what they did in the environment. They're offsetting their carbon footprint, or whatever you want to call it, by purchasing these credits, these mythical things that you just snatch out of the air over top of farmland and ranch land to offset the pollution they're doing on this. So I don't even understand this. You changed nothing about the climate or the environment, and yet now, because you spent money and can control an area, or somebody can sell these carbon credits off their land, you balanced something out and got closer to your target of 2030. I don't understand that. But what I do understand is that these credits, which are becoming more and more prevalent, I believe is one of the reasons why people like Bill Gates are buying up millions of acres of farmland. Because all of the stuff they do in business, they need to offset with carbon credits. What better way, instead of having to pay a rancher or farmer for those credits, than to own the land and be able to sell the credits yourself? Just a thought. So that aside, we're talking about the planet and the welfare and care of the planet. So let's talk about animal health, which I think has a lot to do with the planet. As a large corporation, as we get larger and larger corporations in control of our food, that means they're controlling where the animals go and how they're cared for. Now, in a very small farm or ranch, you have small groups of cattle. I mean, small relatively, even up to 1,500 that are on open range. When they get in a feedlot, the feedlot may be from 1,000 to 5,000 animals spread out over the whole country, right? Each one having 1,000 to, well, probably 500 to 5,000 animals, something like that. You spread that out over an enormous area. Then the waste from these animals can actually be taken out and used as fertilizer. It's used as fertilizer when the animals are grazing. Actually, I'm going to go out and do a video here as soon as the snow melts. This is May, middle of May. We just had a massive snowstorm in most of the areas that I am going to go to, and I can't get there right now. But what I'm going to show is that by actually grazing, changing the way we graze cattle, in something that doesn't look very economically or ecosystem friendly, actually benefits the ground in such a massive way. You can increase the grass production by hundreds of percent, which is actually duplicating. What they're doing is just duplicating what the wild herds of bison would do on these very plains. That's how it works on a local basis if local ranchers and farmers are doing the raising of the animals. But if they sell them commodity, they have to go to one of the feedlots that are now controlled by the big four packers. These four companies that control 85% of your food supply. In the case of hogs and chicken, the entire system from the time they're born to the time they're put on your plate, except for the retail portion in Walmart or Kroger's or wherever they're sold, is controlled entirely by the packers. So they dictate to the farmer how they raise them, what they do, what feed they use, how long to put it on there. And they've got all these hogs now being raised in situations that are completely unhealthy for the animals. They're indoors their entire life. They're actually a special breed of hog now that is bred to be less fatty. Now, one of the reasons for this is when you put that many pigs in such a small area, thousands in just a building, and they never see the sun, so they're not getting vitamin D, they're not getting the nutrients, they're not getting what they need from the environment, plus they're being stressed because it's very highly stressful to an animal to be in that condensed situation and not outside. The only way to keep them healthy is with antibiotics. Antibiotics are stored, your body stores them in the fat, and it doesn't ever go away. So you have to have a breed of hog to live in that way that doesn't have fat, very much fat in it. Otherwise, you'd end up with all that stuff in the fat. Now, you contrast this to hogs that I saw down in Kansas that Mike Calicrate is raising and butchering and selling in his local stores. And they're wide open, they're happy, they're getting vitamin D, they walk up to you and look at you, and it's such a different environment. Another thing we did was fly over one of the feedlots that's feeding cattle for one of these massive companies. And in this feedlot is 170,000 cattle. 170,000 cattle in one corral system. It is such a tight area to have that many. It's just kind of a black blob down there. Well, so this brings a lot of different things into play for the planet, because not only are we talking about animal welfare, but when you condense all the animals into these tight areas with the hogs and the chickens and the cattle, you end up with a massive amount of waste in one place. Now, if they're distributed out over the country, this can be used fertilizer, and it does amazing things for soil. But if you have 170,000 cattle in one spot, all that waste has to be dealt with, and it's actually leaching into waterways. It's getting in the underground water systems. They have to put treatment plants into place. It's an enormous undertaking to deal with this waste. Whereas if you distribute them out in rural America, where we used to have them, we used to grow them in disbursement, like we used to before the 1970s, you actually have that be a benefit to the land. Also, the people of rural America, when they're raising animals out here in what we call husbandry, meaning taking care of the animals, they're nurturing them, they're also living out in nature, they're working in nature. They care about what those animals, the health of those animals, because those animals are their profit. That's mainly what they live on. But also the ecosystem that they actually graze on is their profit. So they take care of the land because they're sitting there seeing it every day. They understand that you can't have more cattle than this in this area, or you overgraze it and you start harming the land. They understand that the ecosystem, what it's supposed to look like, and that if we overdo it for too many years in a row, you'll start losing production in massive amounts, which directly hurts your livelihood. Now, contrast that to the big corporations who are sitting in a boardroom saying, we need more profit. So they want to jam as many animals into a small area as they can because that's cheaper to do, but they're not there every day caring about the welfare of that animal. So I think there's a distinct contrast here as far as the planet is concerned, as far as nature is concerned, environment is concerned. Animal husbandry by cowboys, ranchers, farmers, individuals in rural America is vastly better than the conditions that they have to endure and the systems and setups that they have to endure in these massive corporate farming operations. And we call them farming operations. They're actually, all these rural people they don't have anywhere else to go with their animals. They either have to butcher them and sell them directly to customers themselves, which is a large undertaking, but can be done. I think it's a huge thing that ranchers need to do, and consumers like you need to be aware of that they can do that. It's healthier for you because you're getting the animal from a completely different situation that's raised where it's supposed to be raised. It's less stressed. It's probably got better fat content. It was happier all of its life. And you're giving that money that would go to a corporate person outside of the area or even the country, and you're putting it right in the pocket of the rancher in your local community. And that's part of the community that I'm setting up in school.com/Life in the West. If you want to become a part of that, in there, we're going to start talking about helping people find those ranchers in their local area, because that's one of the biggest questions I get is like, how do I find somebody to buy products from that's local? So even though I may not live in your area, I know a little bit better how to find those things. And in the community, somebody else that lives in that area will know where to buy from a rancher and can give you those names. So that's part of what the benefit of the community is. So now that we have a better understanding of really what the problem is, what about the solutions? Well, the first one that comes to mind is government. Now, I am definitely not for big government. Actually, the opposite would be true. But what I feel the role of government needs to be, especially in a situation like this, is to create an environment where healthy competition and opportunity can abound for individuals and businesses, which means we shouldn't have companies that are monopolies. They shouldn't be able to control massive chunks of our economy or an industry, because what happens is when these companies get this massive and they control so much of the marketplace, they can actually keep competition from even entering the space. They have so much money. How are you going to compete with Walmart when they make $500 billion in profit in 1 year? Can you imagine the amount of money and lobbying power and persuasion they have with that much money? Number one, they can undercut you on price anywhere, anytime, because they have that kind of, you got $500 billion, you can undercut anybody, right? The same with the four packers in the beef industry. It's very hard or impossible to compete with them on a large level because they control so much of the market, you can't break into it. They'll undercut you on price. They'll take you out of the system just because they're bigger. They got more money. What I think the government needs to do in these situations is implement the laws we already have in place and break these companies up that control too much of a marketplace. What this does is creates opportunity for actual competition. So then lots of small companies have opportunities, or individuals, if they want to start into a business, they have an opportunity then to innovate in the industry. They can come up with new ways to get some of that market share. And by that competition, by that healthy competition, you actually create an environment where people have to compete to make better products for customers or compete on price for customers. And they have to pay a healthy wage to the people who are selling the products, because there's other people that want to buy those products. When it's only one company, they can just tell you, I'm only paying this much, and if you don't like it, you don't have anywhere else to go. That is not the essence of capitalism. Actually, people say, well, this is what capitalism is. No, the role of government is not to completely stay out of those industries. They need to implement the laws that are actually on the books and break apart the monopolies to create an environment where people can thrive and have opportunity. Not go in and dictate how everybody is to run their business, because what happens with that is then somebody gets preferential treatment. The people who have been in business longer, or maybe you're better size, or you say you offer, better climate opportunities or better something like that, ends up taking over control. No, the government's job is not to step in and micromanage. It's to create an environment where we can do what we do as business people and individuals and actually achieve the dreams that used to be called the American dream. But government can't fix everything. We as consumers have to take some responsibility. The reason why these things have been able to happen is because we are not willing to vote with our dollars. I heard this the other day and I thought it was great. I think we have to take responsibility and start thinking more long term. And we have to be able to find those local businesses, those manufacturers and those companies that are doing things locally, buying from the local producers themselves, and put our money where our mouth is. I think it will benefit your health greatly. To do that, I also think it will help you feel better about putting money back into your particular community instead of siphoning your money off to a massive corporation to make a couple of people rich. Not that there's anything wrong with being wealthy. It's just that when you siphon off all of the money from these local communities, of course, they're going to die. So that is really the solution, is creating communities. One of the things we kind of lack, and I talked to Calcrate about this, is we lack the opportunity to commingle. Yes, we have social media, but that's kind of removed a little bit from what we're doing here. When you used to go to events, it's like one of the parts I love about a small town, the town I live in, is when you have a football game, everybody's at the football game. Everybody's talking about what happened down the street. Now that can be bad, can be good. I mean, sometimes, when I stuck the plow of the tractors through the fence next to the highway, everybody in town knew that I had done that already, before I even got to town. So some of the things aren't that great. But that community atmosphere is what we're striving for. One of the things we're striving for. And I think it's the solution to this. So I'm starting a community online, and I know it's a digital community, but people are asking for, how do I find these local products? How do I figure this out? And also, I have so much behind the scenes content, and people are asking me for more and more content and live streams, and I don't know really where to put them because I'm distributed out over so many platforms. So I have created a community on skool.com/life in the West. If you go to that link, I'll put the link in the description for you for my community. If you go there before August 15th and join, you will have a free membership forever. After that, it will be pay. So until July 15th, 2024, you have until then to join my community and see what the benefits are. I'm going to be putting out information on local community stuff. I'm going to be doing vlogs in there, live streams, things that you won't get on any other social media platform until maybe I'll put something in there first for 3 months and then I'll post it somewhere. But a lot of content in there is going to be just for that community. And also, I'm working on how we put together a system in there for people to be able to find local made products in their area. And if you can't find them in your area, we'll give you some places that you can order them from that are from Montana or Wyoming or the West or Colorado Springs or something like that. So you can get the products and the food that is local and bypasses these massive global corporations and the problem that we're really all trying to avoid, right? Hope you found this interesting. We covered the problem. The problem really is that all of our money now, instead of coming into our community and staying there and turning over 7 times, is being siphoned off to make a couple people filthy rich in a global system that we need to push back into community living. I'm Trinity Vandenaker. Until next time, God bless.